So where were we? When we left off our story last year, Dante and Virgil had just emerged from the Inferno, and they looked up, and after all that they had been through, they saw the stars once again. And it was at that point that those of us who were still here raised a cheer, and after that we raised a glass, and then we stumbled home. So for this year, let me say that I am so glad that as many of you are here as there are. I actually can't believe it. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you for coming. I want to begin this particular evening, I want to begin our ascent up Mount Purgatorio with a quote from a German philosopher from the middle of the 20th century named Theodor Adorno. These are the words that close his book, Minima Moralia. He says, the only philosophy, and I would add the only theology and the only poetry, which would still be accountable in the face of despair, would be the attempt to consider all things as they would be portrayed from the standpoint of redemption. The only philosophy or theology or poetry which would still be accountable in the face of despair would be the attempt to consider all things as portrayed from the standpoint of redemption. That's what Dante attempts in the second and in the third parts of the Divine Comedy, countering despair by considering all things from the standpoint of redemption. And I want you to hear that that is what this evening is about. Let me offer just a few quick words of orientation for our evening. In addition, you can find some orienting words in your programs as well. By the way, I don't know if all of you have gotten one of these. We had them at the doorway. They're out there. You can get them during the breaks as well. So the first thing to say is, once again, welcome. I am really, really glad that you have come, or maybe that you have come back. This is the second in a grand 3-year project. And I am relieved to know that it's not just me and Laura and Carlene here hanging out all night tonight reading these cantos. Second, for your planning purposes, you know this already, but let me just say it. This is going to take a while. Probably about 6 hours. And I know that's really, really long, but think of this as an opportunity to yield to a different kind of time than what you're used to experiencing. Just like the Inferno, the Purgatorio is one of the great pieces of world literature, and it takes some time to get through it. Consider it as akin to seeing Hamlet, a play that, when it's performed in full, takes almost as long as the time it will take us to get up to the top of Purgatory. Or consider it as akin to seeing Wagner's Ring Cycle. Just consider tonight that you are in the hands of a poetic masterwork, and that it might be worth its while to yield to its power and to see where it takes you. It might be worth your while, rather. Third, along those lines, I'd like to invite you to treat this evening as a contemplative exercise. This is an evening and a practice that's going to require stillness and attention and patience, which means that what we're doing here tonight is a countercultural practice. It is the polar opposite of our streaming TV services, of our social media apps, and of TikTok. I'm not putting those things down, but this is simply an invitation into a wholly other way of being than what we are used to. Fourth, having said all that, please know that when you've hit your limit, it's okay to go. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to move around. It's okay to go to sleep. I love the idea that we might drift in and out of sleep tonight with these amazing words and these amazing images floating throughout our brains. Just know that you're free to do what you need to do tonight to stay sane and whole. Nobody's chaining you to these pews. And so know your limits and take care of yourself. With that in mind, we will take a break every 5 to 7 minutes, every 9 cantos. Fifth, I think you all know this by now, but we have snacks and beverages, including coffee, right out there in the connector. Just outside that doorway for one night only. You're welcome to bring your coffee and your snacks in here, but do be careful. Sixth, there's going to be a celebration when we complete our reading tonight, when we get to the end of Purgatorio, to the end of the Garden of Eden, and get ready to ascend into heaven, as we will do next year. Our celebration is going to take place out there in the connector, where those snacks are. There are some commemorative posters for those who make it all the way through to the end. There are posters as well for each of our readers. I'm going to be sitting over here, so when you're done with your reading, make your way over this way, and I'll hand it to you. Otherwise, I'll have to come and find you, which I'll do, it's all fine. Seventh, I do want to thank all of our readers tonight. Think of this whole evening as a work of communal folk art. It's not only Dante's text that we are encountering. Each and every one of our readers is bringing their own interpretation to the text, and they're bringing their own voices to the reading. And each of us, as listeners, is bringing our own response to the reading. Try not to ask, do I like this? Instead, try to ask, what is this doing? What is the text performing? How is it forming and shaping and moving all of us as a community? I didn't manage to make it happen last year, but I would love to have a conversation with readers and with listeners in another week or two, in which we would reflect upon this experience together. Eighth, like the Inferno, the Purgatorio is a medieval text, which means that there are things in it that none of us would necessarily agree with. Even so, let yourself wonder how you might understand what Dante is up to. Is this best understood as a spiritual and a mystical journey to God? Is it best understood through the lens of psychoanalysis? Is it a political allegory? How do you make sense of this text? Ninth, don't be afraid to feel lost. And don't be afraid not to understand everything, because you won't understand everything. How could you? How could we? Let your mind wander. Let the words wash over you, the way a piece of music washes over you. Take what you can and then leave the rest. It's all here waiting for you, should you ever wish to return to this amazing poem. 10th, this is a poem not about the past, but about the present. One of Dante's finest commentators and readers has said that Dante is a missile pointed toward the present. This is a poem about now. And so understand it as such. Finally, I want to thank all who have helped to make our ascent up the mountain happen tonight. Our readers, yes, but also those who have provided refreshments for us. Sean McCarty and Bob McCracken for running our lights. The ladies who stitch for creating our veil. Bill Slavinsky for commissioning this beautiful sculpture of Dante, seated finally at the end of his journey through paradise, gazing at a rose. Come and look at it during one of our breaks. Most of all, thank you to all of you for being willing to embark on this crazy adventure into the second part of Dante's Divine Comedy, the Purgatorio. With that, I'm going to invite Bill Belluzzi to open our reading tonight with a little Italian. So as Bill begins to read, and as we start our journey, let us raise a cheer for the ascent that we are about to make. So Bill.
Grazie. Il Purgatorio di Dante Alighieri. Il primo canto. Percorrer miglior acque alze le velle, omai la navicella del mio ingegno che lascia dietro a sé mar sì, crudele, e canterò di quel secondo regno dove l'umano spirito si purga e di salire al ciel diventa degno. Ma qui la morta poesia resurga, o santa musee, poi che vostro sono, e qui Calliope alquanto surga, seguitando il mio canto con quel suono, di cui le piche misere sentiro, lo colpo tal che disperar perdono. Dolce color d'oriental zaffiro, che si accoglieva nel sereno aspetto del mezzo, puro infino al primo giro. Agli occhi miei ricominciò diletto, tosto che io uscì fuori dall'aura morta, che me avea contrastati gli occhi e il petto. Lo bel pianetto che da mar conforta, faceva tutto rider l'oriente, velando i pesci che erano in sua scorta. Ma mi volsi a man destra e poi si mente l'altro polo e vidi 4 stelle, non viste mai fuor che la prima gente. Goder pareva al ciel la lor fiammelle, o settentrional vedevo sito, poi che privato se di mirar quelle. Com'io dal loro sguardo fui partito, un po' come volgendo all'altro polo, là onde il carro già era sparito. Vidi presso di me un veglio solo, degno di tanta reverenza in vista, che più non dea padre alcun figliuolo. Lunga la barba e del pel bianco mista, portava i suoi capelli simigliante, da quai cadeva il petto doppia lista. I raggi delle 4 luci sante fregiavan sì la sua faccia di lume. Chi la vedea come il sol fosse davante.
And now in English. To run its course through smoother water, the small bark of my wit now hoists its sail, leaving that cruel sea behind. Now I shall sing the second kingdom, there where the soul of man is cleansed and made worthy to ascend to heaven. Here from the dead, let poetry rise up. O sacred muses, I am yours. Here, let Calliope arise to accompany my song with those same chords, whose force so struck the miserable magpies that, hearing them, they lost all hope of pardon. Sweet color of oriental sapphire, hovering in the calm and peaceful aspect of intervening air, pure to the horizon, pleased my eyes once more as soon as I had left the morbid air that had afflicted both my chest and my eye. The fair planet that emboldens love, smiling, lit up the east, veiling the fishes in her train. I turned to the right, and fixing my attention to the other pole, I saw 4 stars, not seen but by those first on earth. The very sky seemed to rejoice in their bright glittering. Oh, widowed region of the north, denied that sight. Once I had drawn my gaze from them, barely turning toward the other pole, where the constellation of the Wain had set, I saw beside me an old man, alone, who, by his looks, was so deserving of respect that no son owes his father more. His beard was long and streaked with white, as was his hair, which fell in double strands down to his chest. The rays of those 4 holy stars adorned his face with so much light that he seemed to shine with the brightness of the sun. What souls are you to have fled the eternal prison, climbing against the dark and hidden stream, he asked, shaking those venerable locks. Who was your guide, or who your lantern, to lead you forth from that deep night, which steeps the veil of hell in darkness? Are the laws of the abyss thus broken, or has a new decree been made in heaven that, damned, you stand before my cliffs? My leader then reached out to me, and by his words and signs, and with his hands, made me show reverence with knee and brow. Then answered him, I came not on my own. A lady descended from heaven, and at her request, I lent this man companionship and aid. But since it is your will that I make plain the true condition of our presence here, it cannot be that I deny your wish. This man has not yet seen his final sunset, but through his folly was so close to it, his time was almost at an end. I was sent to him, as I have said, for his deliverance. No other way but this could he be saved. I have shown him all the guilty race, and now intend to let him see those spirits who cleanse themselves within your charge. How I have led him would take a long time to tell. Descending from on high, a power aids me to bring him here that he may see and hear you. May it please you to welcome his arrival, since he's in search of liberty, which is so dear, as he well knows who gives his life for it. You know this well, since death in Utica did not seem bitter, there where you left the garment that will shine on that great day. Not by us are the eternal edicts broken, For this man lives, and Minos does not bind me. But I am of the circle where your Marcia implores with her chaste eyes, O holy breast, that you still think of her as yours. For love of her, then, I beseech you, allow us passage through your 7 kingdoms. I will report to her your kindness, if you deign to be mentioned there below. Marcia so pleased my eyes while I lived, he said, that whatever favor she sought of me, I granted. Now that she dwells beyond the evil stream, she cannot move me any longer, according to the law laid down at my deliverance. But if, as you say, a lady from heaven moves and directs you, there is no need of flattery. It is enough that you ask it in her name. Go then. Make sure you gird him with a straight reed and bathe his face, and to wipe all traces of defilement from it. For it would not be fitting to appear, his eyes still dimmed by any mist, before the minister, the first from paradise. This little island, at its lowest point, there where the waves beat down on it, grows reeds in soft and pliant mud. There no other plant can leaf or harden or endure without succumbing to the battering waves. After you are done, do not come back this way. The sun, now rising, will disclose an easier ascent to gain the peak. With that he vanished, and I stood up speechless. Coming closer to my leader, I turned my eyes to him. He began, "My son, follow my steps. Let us turn around, for this plain slopes from here down to its lowest edge." Dawn was overtaking the darkness of the hour which fled before it, and I saw and knew the distant trembling of the sea. We went along the lonely plain like someone who has lost the way and thinks he strays until he finds the road. When we came to a place where the dew can hold its own against the sun because it is protected by the breeze, my master gently spread his hands upon the grass, and I, who understood what he intended, raised my tear-stained cheeks, and he restored the color that hell had obscured in me. Now we came to the empty shore. Upon those waters no man ever sailed, who then experienced his return. There he girded me as pleased another. What a wonder it was that the humble plant he chose to pick sprang up at once in the very place where he had plucked it.
By then, the sun had come to the horizon, the circle of whose meridian at its high point covers Jerusalem. At night, circling on the opposite side, was emerging from the Ganges with the scales that fall out of her hands when she prevails, so that the white and vermilion cheeks of lovely dawn in the place where I was were growing old and turning orange. We were still beside the edge of the sea, like people who are thinking about their journey, who in their hearts go and their bodies stay. And there, as when Mars in the flush of dawn reddens low in the west through the heavy vapors over the floor of the ocean, may I see it again as it appeared to me. Across the sea, a light was coming so swiftly that no flight could compare with its motion. When I had taken my eyes away from it only for a moment to question my leader, I saw it again, grown brighter and larger. Then there appeared to me on each side of it something that I could not make out, something white, and another was emerging little by little below it. All the time until the first white things appeared to be wings, my master uttered not a word. Then when he was sure who the pilot was, he shouted, "Down, down on your knees. There is the angel of God. Put your hands together. From now on, you will see such emissaries. See how he scorns any human contrivance, wanting no oar nor any sail between shores so remote, except for his own wings. See how he has pointed them toward the sky, plying the air with eternal pinions, which unlike mortal plumage never change." Then as the divine bird came closer and closer to us, he appeared brighter, so that my eyes could not bear the sight when he was near us. But I looked down, and he came to the land with so fleet and so light a vessel that it seemed to draw no water at all. At its stern was the celestial helmsman, blessedness like a writing upon him, and seated in it were more than 100 spirits.
When out of Egypt Israel came forth, all sang together with their voices as one, and the rest of that psalm as it is written. Then he made the sign of the holy cross over them, and they all flung themselves on the shore, and as he had come, he was gone, same swiftness. The crowd that was left there did not seem to know anything of the place, looking around them like those who are trying things for the first time. On all sides the sun was firing arrows of day, and its sharp arrows had driven Capricorn out of mid-heaven. When the new people lifted their faces toward us, saying to us, "If you know the way up the mountain, show it to us." And Virgil answered, "Possibly you believe that this is a place with which we are familiar, but we are pilgrims even as you are. We came here just now a little before you did, by another way that was so rough and hard that the climb must seem like play now after it."
The souls who had perceived that I was breathing and understood that I was alive still marveled so that they became deathly pale. And as the people crowd to a messenger bearing an olive branch so that they can hear the news and no one is afraid of trampling, in the same way every one of those fortunate souls kept staring at my face, forgetting, it seemed, to go and see their own beauty. I saw one rush ahead of the rest of them to embrace me with so much affection that he moved me to do the same. Oh, shadows that, except to the eye, are vain. 3 times my hands came together behind him, and as often returned to my breast again. My wonder, I think, must have been painted on me, because the shadow smiled and drew away as I pushed forward, following after him. Gently, he told me to remain still. Then I knew who he was, and I begged him to stay for a little so he would talk with me. He answered me, "Even as I loved you in my mortal body, I do now that I am free, and so I stay. But why are you on this way?" "My Casella, so that I may return here where I am," I said. "I am making this journey, but how has so much time been taken from you?" And he to me, "No wrong was done to me, if he who takes up when and whom he pleases denied this passage many times to me. For out of a just will his own is made, and in truth for 3 months now he has taken with all peace whoever has wished to come. So I, who had turned at that time to the shore, where the water grows salty in the Tiber, was gathered up by him in his kindness. Now he has set wing for the mouth of that river, since that is where the souls are forever gathering who do not sink to Acheron. And I, if a new law does not take from you the memory or the mode of singing of love that used to quiet all my longings, may it please you for a while to comfort with it my soul, which, on the journey here with its body, has become so weary."
Love that speaks in my mind, persuading me. He began then, so sweetly that even now the sweetness goes on sounding in me. My master and I and the people who were with him seemed as content as though there was nothing else touching their minds. All of us were caught up listening to his notes. And here is the venerable old man shouting, "What is this lingering spirits? What is this negligence, this standing still? On your way to the mountain, running, and peel away the dead skin that keeps you from seeing God." As doves, when they are picking up wheat seeds altogether, quietly feeding without their usual puffed-up display, if something should appear that frightens them, suddenly abandon what had tempted them, seized as they are by what matters more to them. So I saw that fresh troop abandon, singing and wheel away toward the slope, like one who goes without knowing the direction. Nor were we less prompt in our
I will read the first tercet in Italian, followed by the translation. Avvenga che la solitana fuga dispergesse color per la campagna, rivolti al monte dove ragion ne fuga. While others were quickly scattering across the field, headed for the mountain where justice tracks us down, I clung to my faithful friend. Where would I be now if it weren't for him? Who would lead me up the mountain? He seemed overcome by guilt. You noble, unstained conscience, how sharper than a serpent's tooth is a tiny fault. When he stopped his frantic rushing, which undermines the gravity of any action, my mind, until now laser-focused, became curious to see more. I looked up at the mountain's height, a measure of how far it had once been hurled from the sea bottom. The sun, a red flame behind my back, threw a shape in front of me that exactly matched the sunlight blocked by my body. Since the ground was only dark in front of me, I looked to one side, worried I had been abandoned. And my reassurance, "You still don't trust me? You don't believe I'm with you and acting as your mentor? It's time for Vespers back there, where they buried the body I lived in when I cast a shadow. Naples has it now. It was moved from Brindisi. No shadow in front of me shouldn't surprise you, any more than the fact that one bottomless lake of sky doesn't block the light coming from another. The purest of the pure designs our bodies to suffer discomfort, extremes of heat and cold, and doesn't care to tell us how he does it. We're foolish if we think we can use reason to unlock the mystical process by which three persons become one substance. Limit yourselves, human beings, to the simple that is. If you'd been able to grasp everything, Mary could have turned down the job of baby maker. You've seen from the fruitless questing by some men who, if they had been successful, wouldn't be grieving for all eternity. I am speaking of Aristotle and Plato, and of countless others. He looked down, said nothing more, but still seemed upset. Meanwhile, we'd arrived at the foot of the mountain, where we found a cliff so sheer not even trained legs could have made it up. Compared to this, the roughest and most desolate rock-bound path between Lerici e Torbia would seem like an easy open-air escalator. Who knows on which side of the slope is more graded, my teacher paused to think. Where someone without wings could climb? While he stood there with his head bent, trying to sort out which way was best, and I was staring at the cliff's face above, from the left, a group of souls suddenly appeared to be walking towards us, but so slowly they seemed not to be moving at all. Look up, sir, I said, over there. They might offer us advice if you can figure it out by yourself, if you can't figure it out by yourself. He looked up with obvious relief and said, since they're moving so slowly, let's go to them. And you, dear son, hang on to that hope. Even though we'd taken quite a few steps, I'd say they were still far away, as the distance a good pitcher can throw. When they all pressed against the hard rock of the high wall and huddled, stock still, the way stunned people freeze up and stare. You who've come to a good end, the true spiritual elite, Virgil began, by the peace I trust is waiting for each of you. Could you tell us where the incline is least steep so we can make the climb? The more one knows, the more one hates to waste time. Like sheep leave the pen, one, then two, then three, while the others stand there, pure timidity, eyes and snouts to the ground. Then, what the first does, the others do, silently, simple-mindedly, ending up, if one stops, smack dab against the one in front of it, without knowing why. That's how I saw the first line of that fortunate rock. More slowly forward, artlessly, move slowly forward, artlessly, and with humility. As soon as those in front saw the break in the light on the ground to my right and my shadow on the rock wall, they stopped short and stepped back. Then all the others coming up behind did the same thing, clueless as to why. Before you even ask, yes, what you see here, in fact, is a human body taking a man-sized bite out of the light on the ground. Don't overact, but think, my teacher said. It can't be without heaven's sent clearance that he is trying to scale this wall. To which those decent people responded, in that case, turn around and walk in front of us, fanning the air forward with the backs of their hands. One of them then began, whoever you are, as you are walking, look back at me and consider whether you ever saw me on the other side. I turned and gave him the once-over. Blonde hair, handsome, a rather refined look, but one eyebrow split where it had suffered a cut. When I politely said no to ever having seen him, he said, look at this, and he showed me a wound above his collarbone. Smiling, he then said, I am Manfred, grandson of the Empress Constance. Given that fact, I beg you, when you return, go and see my lovely daughter, the progenitor of the paragon kings of Sicily and Aragon, and tell her the truth, if she has been told otherwise. After my body was slashed with 2 mortal stab wounds, I turned in tears to him who willingly pardons. My sins were horrific, but the expansive arms of the infinite goodness embrace any who walk with them. If the Archbishop of Cosenza, sent by Clement to locate me, had better understood this aspect of God, the bones of my body would still be at the bridgehead near Benevento, marked and guarded by a mound of heavy boulders. Now they're rain-washed and wind-scattered, outside the kingdom, near the banks of the Verde, where he had them carried with candles snuffed. In spite of being cursed, no one is so lost that eternal love can't restore them. As long as hope is still a speck of green left in it, the truth is, if at the hour of death one's a heretic of the Holy Church, even if they repent, they wait at the foot of this precipice. 30 years for each one, being presumptuous, unless the sentence gets reduced by prayer said by the righteous. Now you see how happy you could make me by telling my good Constance you saw me, and also about this exception. There is much to be gained here from those back there.
When one of our faculties is given over to pleasure or to pain, our soul will focus on that one alone and seem to pay no mind to any of its other powers, revealing the error in the doctrine that maintains among the souls within us, one is more aflame. And therefore, when we see or hear a thing that concentrates the soul, time passes and we're not aware of it. This I truly understood, listening to that spirit in amazement, for the sun had already climbed 50 degrees. And I had failed to notice when we came to where these souls cried out as one, "Here is the place you asked for." Often at the time when the grapes are darkening, a peasant with a pitchfork full of thorns will plug a larger opening than the gap through which my leader and I behind him climbed alone after the troop that went on without us. One may go up to San Leo or descend to Noli or mount the summits of Bismantova or Cancumi on foot. But here one had to fly. I mean with the swift wings and plumage of great desire, following that guidance which gave me hope and showed me light. We climbed into a fissure in the rock. The stony walls pressed close on either side. We had to use our hands to keep our footing. When we had reached the crag's high upper ledge, out on the open hillside, "Master," I said, "which path shall we take?" And he to me, "Do not fall back a single step. Just keep climbing up behind me until some guide who knows the way appears." The summit was so high that it was out of sight, the slope far steeper than the line drawn from the mid-quadrant to the center. Exhausted, I complained, "Beloved Father, turn around and see how I'll be left alone unless you pause." "My son," he said, "drag yourself up there," pointing to a ledge a little higher, which from that place encircles all the hill. His words so spurred me on, I forced myself to clamber up until I stood upon the ledge. There we settled down to rest, facing the east, where we had begun our climb, for often it pleases us to see how far we've come. First I gazed upon the shore below, then raised my eyes to the sun, and was amazed to see its rays were striking from the left. The poet understood I was astounded to see the road that chariot of light was taking in its path between north and us. And so he said, "If the mirror that moves its light to either side of the equator were in the company of Castor or of Pollux, the red part of the zodiac would show still closer to the bears, unless it were to leave its ancient track. If you would understand how this may be, with your mind focused, picture Zion and this mountain, positioned so on earth, they shared the same horizon, but are in different hemispheres. Then you shall see how to his misfortune, the highway Phaeton failed to drive must pass this mountain on one side and Zion on the other, if you consider it with care. Indeed, my master, I said, I did not understand what is now clear, the point for which my wit was lacking. The mid-circle of that celestial motion, which a certain science calls equator, and which always lies between the sun and winter, for the very reason you have given, is as far to the north from here as the Hebrews saw it toward the torrid part. But please, tell me just how far we have to go up the hill, for the hill rises farther than my eyes can climb. And he to me, the mountain is so fashioned that the climb is harder at the outset, and as one ascends, becomes less toilsome. When climbing uphill will seem as pleasing, as easy as the passage of a boat that lets the current float it down. At that point, this trail will be done. There, look to rest your weariness. This I know for truth. I say no more. As soon as he said these words, a voice close by called out, "Perhaps you'll feel the need to sit before then." Hearing this, both of us turned around and saw to our left an enormous rock that neither he nor I at first had noticed. When we approached, we saw some people resting in the shade behind the boulder, as men will settle down in indolence to rest. And one of them, who seemed so very weary, was sitting with his arms around his knees, his head pressed down between them. "Oh, my dear Lord," I said, "just look at him. He shows himself more indolent than if sloth had been his very sister." Then he turned and fixed his eyes on us, barely lifting his face above his haunch, and said, "Go on up then, you who are so spry." At that, I realized who he was, and the exertion that still kept me short of breath now did not keep me from his side. When I reached him, he barely raised his head to say, "Have you marked how the sun drives his car past your left shoulder?" His lazy movements and curt speech slowly shaped my lips into a smile, and I began, "Bellequa, no longer need I grieve for you. But tell me, what keeps you sitting here? Are you waiting for an escort, or have you gone back to your lazy old ways?" And he, "Brother, what's the good of going up? The angel of God who sits at the gateway would not let me pass into the torments. I must wait outside as long as in my lifetime the heavens wheeled round me, while I put off my sighs of penance to the end. Unless I'm helped by prayers that rise from a heart that lives in grace. What good are those that go unheard in heaven?" And now, not waiting for me, the poet began to climb the path, saying, "Come along. Look now, the sun is touching the meridian, and on Morocco's shore, night sets her foot."
I had already left those shades behind and followed in the footsteps of my guide, when there beneath me, pointing at me, one shade shouted, "See the second climber climb. The sun seems not to shine on his left side. And when he walks like one alive." When I had heard these words, I turned my eyes and saw the shades astonished as they stared at me. at me and the broken light. Why have you let your mind get so entwined, my master said, that you have slowed your walk? Why should you care what's whispered here? Come, follow me, and let these people talk. Stand tall like a sturdy tower that does not shake its summit, though the winds may blast. Always the man in whom thought thrusts ahead of thought, allows the goal he's set to move far off. The force of one thought saps the other's force. Could my reply be other than, I come? And somewhat colored by the hue that makes one sometimes merit grace, I spoke those words. Meanwhile, along the slope, crossing our road slightly ahead of us, people approached, singing the Miserere, verse by verse. When they became aware that I allowed no path for rays of light to cross my body, they changed their song into a long, hoarse, oh. And two of them, serving as messengers, hurried to meet us. And those two inquired, please tell us something more of who you are. My master answered them, you can return and carry this report to those who sent you. In truth, the body of this man is flesh. If, as I think, they stop to see his shadow, that answer is sufficient. Let them welcome him graciously, and that may profit them. Never did I see kindled vapors rend clear skies at nightfall, or the setting sun cleave August clouds with a rapidity that matched the time it took those two to speed above. And there arrived they with the others, wheeled back like ranks that run without a rein. These people pressing in on us are many. They come beseeching you, poet said. Don't stop. Listen as you move ahead. O soul who make your way to gladness with the limbs that you had at birth, do stay your steps a while, they clamored as they came, to see if there's any among us that you knew, that you may carry word of him beyond. Why do you hurry on? Why don't you stop? We all were done to death by violence, and we all sinned until our final hour. Then light from heaven granted understanding, so that repenting and forgiving, we came forth from life at peace with God. And he instilled in us the longing to see him. And I, although I scrutinize your faces, I recognize no one. But spirits born to goodness, if there's anything within my power that might please you, then by that same peace, which in the steps of such a guide I seek from world to world, I shall perform it. And one began, we all have faith in your good offices without your oath, as long as lack of power does not curb your will. Thus I, who speak alone before the others, beseech you, if you ever see the land that lies between Romagna and the realm of Charles, that you be courteous to me, entreating those in Fano to bestow fair prayers to purge me of my heavy sins. My home was Fano, but the piercing wounds from which there poured the blood where my life lived, from there poured the blood, and those I received from Antenor's sons. There where I thought that I was most secure, for he of Este, hating me far more than justice warranted, had that deed done. But had I fled instead toward Myra, where they overtook me at Oriaco, then I should still be beyond, where men draw breath. I hurried to the marsh. The mud, the reeds entangled me. I fell. And there I saw a pool poured from my veins form on the ground. Another shade then said, "Ah, so may that desire which draws you up the lofty mountain be granted. With kind pity, help my longing." I was from Montefeltro. I'm beyond Dante. Giovanna and the rest, they all neglect me. Therefore, among these shades I go in sadness. And I to him, what violence or chance so dragged you from the field of Campaldino that we know nothing of your burial place? Oh, he replied, across the Casentino there runs a stream called Arciano, born in the Apennines above the Hermitage. There, at the place where that stream's name is lost, I came. My throat was pierced, fleeing on foot and bloodying the plain. And there it was that I lost sight and speech. And there, as I had finished uttering the name of Mary, I fell. And there my flesh alone remained. I'll speak the truth. Do you among the living retell it? I was taken by God's angel, but he from hell cried, "You from heaven, why do you dye me him? For just one tear you carry off his deathless part, but I shall treat his other part in other wise." You are always aware how in the air moist vapor will gather and again revert to rain, as soon as it had climbed where cold enfolds. His evil will, which only seeks out evil, conjoined with intellect, and with the power his nature grants, he stirred up wind and vapor. And then when day was done, he filled the valley from Pratamagno as far as the great ridge with mist. The sky above was saturated. The dense air was converted into water. Rain fell, and then the gullies had to carry whatever water earth could not receive. And when that rain was gathered into torrents, it rushed so swiftly toward the royal river that nothing could contain its turbulence. The angry Arciano at its mouth had found my frozen body, and it thrust it into the Arno and set loose the cross that on my chest my arms in pain had formed. It rolled me on the banks and the river bed, then covered me, girded me with its debris. Pray, after you returning to the world, when after your long journeying you've rested, the third soul, following the second, said, "May you remember me, who am La Pia Siena made, Marimma unmade, me. He who, when we were wed, gave me his pledge, and then as nuptial ring his gem, knows that."
The loser, when a game of dice breaks up, despondent, often lingers there as he, learning the hard way, replays all his throws. The crowd leaves with a winner, some in front, some hugging him from behind, the rest close to his side. They beg to be recognized. He keeps on going, listening to them all. The ones who get a handout will not push, and this is the protection from the crowd. I was the man caught in a begging throng, turning my face towards one and then the next, buying my way out with my promises. I saw Arotin, who met his death at the revengeful hand of Gin and Ditako. I saw that soul who drowned, giving pursuit. I saw with hands outstretched, imploring me, but Federico Novello and the Pisan too, whose death inspired good Marzuko's strength. I saw Count Orso, and I saw that soul torn from its body. So he said, by hate and envy, not for any wrong he did. Pierre de la Bosse, I mean, and while still here on earth, the Lady of Brabant might well take care lest she should end up in fouler flock. Once I had freed myself from all these shades who prayed only that others pray for them and thus quicken their way to bliss, I said, it seems to me that somewhere in your verse, you, O my light, deny explicitly the power of prayer to bend the laws of heaven. Yet these souls ask precisely for such prayers. Does this mean then, their hopes are all in vain? Or have I failed to understand your words? And he, what I once wrong wrote means what it says. Yet if you think about it carefully, you must see that their hopes are not deceived. High justice would in no way be debased if ardent love should cancel instantly the debt that these penitents must satisfy. The words of mine you cite apply alone to those whose sins could not be purged by prayer, because their prayers had no access to God. Do not try to resolve so deep a doubt. Wait until she shall make it clearer. She, the light between truth and intelligence. You understand me. I mean Beatrice. She will appear upon this mountaintop. You will behold her smiling in her bliss. I said, my Lord, let us make greater haste. I'm not as tired as I was before, and look, the mountain casts a shadow now. As long as daylight lasts, we shall move on, climbing as far as possible, he said, but things are not the way you think they are. Before you reach the top of the mountain, you'll see the sun come out from where the slope is hiding him, preventing you from casting any shade. But see that spirit stationed over there, all by himself, the one who looks at us. He will show us the quickest way to go. We made our way towards him. O Lombard soul, how stately and disdainful you appear. What majesty in your steady gaze. He did not say a word to us, but let us keep on moving towards him while he was watching like a couchant lion on guard. But Virgil went straight up to him and asked directions for the best way to ascend. The shade ignored the question put to him, asking of us instead, where we were born and who are we. My gentle guide began, Mantua, and the other, until then all self-absorbed, sprang to his feet and came towards him. O Mantuum, I am Sordello of your own town. And the two shades embraced. Ah, slavish Italy, the home of grief, ship without a pilot caught in a raging storm, no queen of provinces, whorehouse of shame. How quick that noble soul was to respond to the mere sound of this sweet city's name by welcoming his fellow citizen, while now no one within your bounds knows rest from war, and those enclosed by the same wall and moat, even they are at each other's throats. O wretched Italy, search for all your coast, probe to your very center. Can you find within you any part that is at peace? What matter if Justinian repaired the bridle, if the saddle is empty now? The shame would have been less if he had not. You priests who should pursue your holiness, remembering what God prescribes for you, let Caesar take the saddle as he should. See how this beast has grown viciously wild, without the rider's spur to set her straight, since you dared take the reins into your hands. O German Albert, you abandoned her, allowing her ungoverned to run wild. You should have been astride her saddle bow. Let a just judgment fall down from the spars upon your house, one unmistakable and strange enough to terrify your heir. You and your sire, whom greed for greater wealth holds back up there, have let this come to pass. The garden of the empire is laid waste. Come see the Cappelletti, callous heart. See the Monaldi, the Monticelli ruined, the Pipilecci fearful for their fire. Come, heartless one, come see your noblemen who suffer. Help them heal their wounds. Come see how safe it is to dwell in Santa Fiore. Come see your city in Rome, in mourning now, widowed, alone. Lamenting day and night, my Caesar, why have you abandoned me? Come see how people love each other now. If you cannot be moved to pity us, then come and feel the shame your name has earned. O Jove supreme, crucified here on earth for all mankind, have I the right to ask if your eyes no longer look at us? Or is this part of a great plan conceived in your deep intellect to some good end that we are powerless to understand? For all the towns of Italy are filled with tyrants. Any dolt who plays the role of partisan can pass for a Marcellus. Florence, my Florence, how happy you must be with this digression, for you're not involved. Thank your resourceful citizens for that. Some men have justice in their heart. They think before they shoot their judgments from the bow. Your people merely shoot off words about it. Some men think twice when offered public post. Your citizens accept before they're asked, shouting, I'll gladly sacrifice myself. Rejoice, I say to you. You have good cause. Rich as you are, so wise, knowing such peace, the facts bear out the truth of what I say. Athens and Lacedaemon, still well known for ancient laws and civil discipline, showed but the faintest signs of order then. Compared to you, who can plan so cleverly that by the time November is half done, the laws spun in October are in shreds? How often within memory have you changed coinage and customs, laws and offices, and members of your body politic? Think back, and if you see the truth, you'll see that you are like a woman, very sick, who finds no rest on her soft, sumptuous bed, but turns and tosses to escape her pain.
After their frank and joyful exclamations of greeting had been made repeatedly, Sordello stood back, saying, "But who are you?" Before spirits worthy to ascend to God had seen the path that brings them to this mountain, my bones were buried by Octavian. I am Virgil. That I lost heaven was not consequence of sin, but of the absence of the faith. Such was the answer my guide chose to give. Like someone suddenly confronted by a thing that makes him marvel, which he both believes and can't believe, saying, "It is, it isn't." So seems Sordello. Then he bent his head and, turning with humility to Virgil, bowed to embrace him as a junior does. "O glory of the Italians," he said, "through whom our language learned its potency. O eternal treasure of the land I come from, what merit or what grace shows you to me? If I am worthy to hear words of yours, tell me if you're from hell and from what cloister." "Through all the circles of the weeping kingdom," he answered, "I have come to reach this mountain. A power from heaven moved me, and I came. Not for deeds done, but those undone, I lost the sight of that high sun that you aspire to, which was not known to me until too late. There is a place back there, sad, not because of hideous tortures, but for darkness only, where grief is voiced by sighing, not by screaming. There I am placed among the innocent children who were bitten by death's tooth before they'd lived long enough to be washed free of human guilt. And therefore I am with those who, though not clothed in the three holy virtues, yet had known the four others truly, and kept faith with them. But now, please, if you know and can, give us some indication of the quickest path that leads to Purgatory's true beginning." Sordello said, "We are not fixed in place. I am permitted to climb up and around. As far as may be, I will be your guide. But look, the daylight's now already fading, and once night's fallen, there is no going higher. It would be best to find some decent lodging. There are spirits over there upon your right. With your consent, I'll bring them over to you, and with great pleasure make them known to you." "But how's this?" came the answer. "If one wanted to climb at night, would his path be obstructed by some power, or would his strength desert him?" The good Sordello drew a line on the ground with his finger, saying, "See, even this line you could not cross after the sun's departed. It wouldn't be that something strove to stop you from climbing higher. Only the night's blackness, that's what would weaken and confuse your will. Instead, of course, you could choose to descend and wander to and fro along the shoreline while day is closed off from us by the horizon." To which my lord replied as if in wonder, "In that case, take us to this place in which you say it will be pleasant to spend time." We'd hardly moved much on from there when I became aware of the mountainside was sunken as valleys hollow out our mountains here. "There," said the shade, "you see our destination, where the slope's made of itself a mother's lap. There let us pause and wait for day's renewal." Between steep and flat, an angled path allowed us to make our way to the edge of that recess, where more than half the mountainside was missing. Fine silver, gold, white lead, or cochineal, serene, translucent amber, indigo, fresh facets of new broken emerald, would be eclipsed in color and in brilliance beside the grass and flowers in that hollow, as the lesser things eclipsed by something greater. Nature not only had been painter there, but from the sweetness of 1,000 odors had made a single unknown composite. Salve Regina, that I heard folks singing, seated amongst the flowers there on the grass, who'd not been visible from beyond the valley. Before the little sun remaining closes itself in its nest, Our Mantuan guide continued, "Don't ask me to go down and introduce you. You will be better able to decipher their faces and behavior from this height than if we went down on the plain amongst them. That one who's seated highest with the look of having neglected what he should have done, who doesn't move his mouth in all that singing, was the Emperor Rudolph, who might have cured the wounds that caused the death of Italy. It will be long till anyone revives her. The one by him who seems to comfort him once ruled that country where the water is born that Moldau bears to Elbe to the ocean. His name was Ottokar. Even in swaddling clothes, he was worth more than Wenceslas, his bearded progeny, who feeds on lust and indolence. And that small-nosed one, close in conversation with the other, who seemed so benevolent, died, fleeing and deflowering lily. See how he beats his breast as he remembers, and see the other two, who, as he sighs, makes of his palm a bed to rest his cheek. They are the father and the father-in-law of Francis Curse. They know his evil life, and hence the grief that pierces him so sharply. That one who looks so strongly built and sings in harmony with the one with the manly nose wore every virtue once upon his girdle. If the boy seated behind him could have followed him as king, that virtue might have safely passed on down from vessel to vessel, which can't be said of those who did succeed it. Frederick and James now hold the kingdoms. No one inherited the better legacy. Rarely does human probity rise up through the branches of the family, and this he wills that gives it, so we seek it rightly. My words relate as much to the one with the nose as to that other Peter, whom he sings with. He caused the grief of Naples and Provence. That Prance is much inferior to the seed, as with more pride Constanza's right to speak of her husband than Beatrice and Marguerite. See too the king who lived a simple life sitting alone there, Henry III of England. That one had better issue in his branches. And that one, seated lowest on the ground among them, looking upward, is the Marquis Guglielmo, for whose war with Alexandria both Calaviz and Monferrato weep.
It was already the hour that turns back the desire of seafarers and softens their hearts on the day that they have said farewell to their sweet friends. The hour that pierces the new pilgrim with love if he hears a bell far off that seems to mourn the dying day, when I began to empty out my hearing and to gaze at one of the souls risen to his feet, who with its hand asked all to listen. It joined and raised both palms, sending his gaze toward the east as if to say to God, I care for nothing else. Te Lucas ante came forth from his mouth, so devoutly and with such sweet tones that it wrapped me from awareness of myself and the others, and then sweetly and devoutly followed it through all the rest of the hymn, their eyes turned toward the supernal wheels. Sharpen here, readers, your eyes to the truth, for the veil is now surely so fine that passing within is easy. Then I saw that noble army silently gaze upward, as if waiting, pale and humble. And I saw two angels come forth from on high and fly down, bearing two fiery swords, broken off and deprived of their points. As green as newborn leaves were their robes, which struck and fanned by green feathers trailed behind. One came to stand a little above us, and the other descended to the opposite bank, so that the people were contained between them. I saw clearly their blond heads, but my eye was dazzled by their faces, as a faculty is confounded by excess. Both come from Mary's bosom, said Sordello, to guard the valley because of the serpent that will come along soon. At which I, who did not know by what path, turned about all chilled and drew close to the faithful shoulders. And Sordello again, now let us go down into the valley among the great shades, and we will speak to them. It will be a great grace for them to see you. Only 3 steps, I think, did I go down, and I was below when I saw one who kept staring at me as if he wished to recognize me. It was the time already when the air was becoming dark, but not so that between his eyes and mine it did not reveal what earlier had been hidden. He started toward me, and I toward him. Noble Judge Nino, how I rejoice to see that you are not among the damned. No happy greeting was held back between us. Then he asked, how long is it since you came to the foot of the mountain across the distant waters? Oh, I said to him, coming through the grim places I arrived this morning. I am in my first life, though I am acquiring a second by this journey. And when my reply was understood, Sordello and he drew back like folk suddenly dismayed. One turned to Virgil and the other to a soul sitting nearby, crying, up, Conrad, come see what a grace God has willed. Then turning to me, by the singular gratitude you owe to him who so hides his first because that there's no ford for it. When you are back beyond the wide waves, tell my Giovanna to call out for me to the place where innocents are answered. I do not believe her mother loves me anymore, since she gave up the white fillets, which wretched she will yearn for again. Through her, one readily understands how long the fire of love lasts in a female, if sight or touch does not frequently kindle it. The viper under which the Milanese pitch camp will not adorn her tomb as much as a cock of Galernia would have done. So he spoke, his face stamped with rightful zeal that flames temperately in the heart. My greedy eyes were still seeking the sky, especially where the stars are slowest, like a wheel closest to the axle. And my leader said to me, son, what are you staring at up there? And I said to him, at those 3 little torches with which the pole here is all aflame. Then he to me, the 4 bright stars that you saw this morning are low over there, and these have gone up to where those were. As he was speaking, Sordello drew him closer, saying, see there our adversary, and he pointed where he should look. On the side, where the little valley has no barrier, there was a snake, perhaps like the one that gave Eve the bitter food. Among the grass and the flowers came the evil slither, now and again turning its head and licking its back like a beast that smooths itself. I did not see, and therefore cannot say, how the 2 celestial hawks began to move, but I clearly saw them both in motion. Hearing their green wings cleave the air, the serpent fled, and the angels turned, flying paired back up to their posts. The shade that had drawn near the judge when he called through that whole assault had not left off gazing at me. So may the lamp that leads you on high find sufficient fuel in your free will to take you to the flowering summit that it began. If you know any true tidings of Val de Magra or any nearby place, tell me, for I was once powerful there. I was called Conrad Malaspina, not the ancient one, but from him descended. I bore my people the love that is here refined. Oh, said I to him, I have never been through your lands, but where in all Europe does anyone dwell where they are not celebrated? The fame that honors your house is loud among the lords and in the countryside. so that he knows of it who has never been there. And I swear to you, so may I go above, that your honored people have not been stripped of the worth of person sword. Custom and nature so privilege them that even though the wicked head of the world lead it astray, they alone walk erect and scorn the path of evil. And he, believe so, the son will not lie down 7 times in the bed that the ram covers and straddles with all 4 feet, before that courteous opinion will be fixed in the center of your head with larger nails than the speech of others, if the course of judgment is not stayed.
The concubine of old Tithonus, fresh from her doting lover's arms, was glowing white at the window of the east, her forehead glittering with gems set in the shape of that cold-blooded creature that strikes men with its tail. Where we were, night had made 2 steps in her ascent, and now the wings of the 3rd were already drooping, when I, who had with me something of Adam, lay down, overcome by sleep, there on the grass where the 5 of us were seated. At the hour near the verge of morning, when the swallow begins her plaintive song, remembering perhaps her woes of long ago, and when our mind, more pilgrim from the flesh and less caught up in thoughts, is more prophetic in its visions, in a dream, I seem to see an eagle with golden feathers hovering in the sky, his wings spread wide, ready to swoop. And to me, it seemed I was in the very place where Ganymede abandoned his own kind when he was caught up to the highest council. And I pondered, perhaps it is its habit to strike only here, disdaining to pluck from elsewhere any in its talons. And then it seemed to me that after wheeling a while, it plunged down terrible as lightning and carried me straight to the sphere of fire. There it seemed that it and I were both aflame, and the imagined burning was so hot, my sleep was broken and gave way. Not otherwise, Achilles started up, gazing with startled eyes around him, not knowing where he was. That time his mother carried him, sleeping in her arms, from Chiron to Skyros, where later the Greeks would take him away. Then I awoke, the sleep gone from my eyes, and then went deadly pale, like a man frozen in his terror. At my side, there was no one but my comfort. The sun more than 2 hours high, my face was turned toward the sea. Do not be frightened, said my Lord. Have confidence, for all is well with us. Do not hold back, but rally all your strength. Now you have come to Purgatory. There you see the rock wall that encloses it, and where that seems breached, the entrance. A short time ago, in the early light of dawn, when your soul was asleep within you, on the flowers that adorn the place below, there came a lady who said, I am Lucy. Let me gather up this sleeping man, so I may speed him on his way. Sordello stayed, as did the other noble souls, and she took you, and as soon as it was day, went up, and I then followed in her steps. Here she set you down, but first her lovely eyes showed me that entrance standing open. Then she and sleep as one departed. Like a man who comes to see the truth when he has been in doubt and now is reassured, confidence replacing what in him was fear, so was I changed. When my leader saw that I was free of care, he started up the path and I behind him, heading for the height. Reader, you surely understand that I am raising the level of my subject here. Do not wonder, therefore, if I sustain it with more artifice. We drew closer until we reached a place where what at first had seemed a gap, a breach that rends a wall, I now saw was a gate with 3 steps leading up to it, each one of a different color. The keeper of that gate as yet said not a word. And when my eyes could make him out more clearly, I saw that he was seated above the topmost step, his face so bright I could not bear to look. In his hand he held a naked sword, which so reflected his bright rays, I often had to turn my eyes away. Say it from there, what do you want? He began. And where is your escort? Beware lest your arrival cause you grief. A lady from heaven who knows about such things, my master replied, said to us just now, go that way lies the gate. And may she speed your steps to good, continued the courteous keeper of the gate. Come forward, then, to these our stairs. At that, we moved ahead. The first step was of clear white marble, so polished that my image was reflected in true likeness. The second was darker than the deepest purple of unhewn stone, looking as if it had been burned, cracked through its length and breadth. The third, resting its heavy mass above, seemed to me porphyry, a flaming red as blood that spurts out from a vein. On this, seated on the threshold, which seemed to be of adamant, the angel of God rested both his feet. Up the 3 steps my leader drew me, and I was glad for that. Then he said, humbly petition him to slide the bolt. Devoutly I cast myself down at his holy feet. I begged him for mercy and to let me enter. But first 3 times I smote my breast. With the point of his sword, he traced 7 P's upon my forehead, then said, once you are inside, see that you wash away these wounds. Ashes or earth, when it is dug up dry, would be the very color of his vestments. Out from under them he drew 2 keys, one of gold, the other one of silver. He touched the door, first with the white, then the yellow, and thus my wish was satisfied. Any time one of these keys should fail so that it does not turn inside the lock, he said to us, this portal does not open. One is more precious, but the other one requires much skill and understanding before it will unlock. For it is this one that unties the knot. From Peter I do hold them, and his instruction was to err in opening rather than in keeping locked, if but the soul fall prostrate at my feet. Then he pushed one door of the sacred portal open, saying, "Enter, but I warn you, he who looks back must then return outside." And when the hinges of that sacred door, which are heavy and resounding metal, were turning on their linchpins, the Tarpeian rock roared not so loud, nor proved so strident, when good Metellus was drawn away, and it was then left bare. I turned, intent on a new sound, and thought I heard Te Deum Laudamus in voices mingled with sweet counterpoint, giving me the same impression one has when listening to singers accompanied by an organ, when the words are sometimes clear and sometimes lost.
All right, it's time to take a break. 5 minutes to get coffee, to use the restroom, and then we will enter Purgatorio proper, having just passed through the gate.